You often hear fighters and trainers say that boxing is 80% mental. Well, we can argue about percentages all day long, but the point is that the mental aspect of boxing is just as important as the physical aspect. You can be in great shape, you can have all the skills in the world, but if someone is able to spot a weakness in your psychology and exploit that weakness, they can throw you off your game and you won't fight to the best of your ability when you get in the ring. You may not stick to a game plan, etc., etc. So I've been looking at Anthony Joshua's mental game for a while now, because I think it was earlier this year or maybe it was last year. I saw an interview with Joshua, and the interviewer, spoke to him about the Olympics and mentioned the fact that a lot of people felt he lost his first fight in the Olympics against Erislandy Sivan. And you know how Anthony Joshua's demeanor normally is. He's normally this super PC, nice guy and all that. But all of a sudden, his demeanor completely switched up when the interviewer mentioned the Erislandy Sivan fight. And this seething rage almost came out of Anthony Joshua. He was trying to hold it down, but you could tell this guy was pissed off about what the interviewer was saying. And at the time, I was kind of taken aback. I was like, he's only, because normally Anthony Joshua is a very measured kind of guy. He sounds very analytical and very, very level-headed. You don't normally see emotional responses out of him. But when this interviewer said that, you got an emotional response from Anthony Joshua, and he was really pissed off, and he almost was stuck for words, it seemed. And then he just found it very uncomfortable what the guy was saying. So I took a note of that. I thought, wow, that's strange for a level-headed guy to get that upset about people's opinions, thinking that he lost. That's surprising. And in an interview the other day on IFL TV, Kugan Cassius was interviewing Anthony Joshua, and he mentioned Anthony Joshua's amateur rival, Dillian White, who was the first guy to beat Joshua in the amateurs. And I've mentioned this previously, but whenever I've seen interviews with Anthony Joshua, he's always seemed a bit uneasy about talking about Dillian White. And in fact, it was to the point where he wasn't even mentioning Dillian White's name up until very recently, up until the Klitschko camp that he was involved in, where Dillian White was present. He wouldn't even mention Dillian White's name. When the interviewer would be talking about him. Like, I remember an interview where Anthony Joshua was being asked about his amateur career, and he basically said, "Oh, I lost to some guy." I mean, he was mentioning names of other fighters he fought in the amateurs, but then he said, "Oh, I lost to some guy in my third amateur fight, a guy who had a lot more experience than me, etc., etc." He wouldn't mention the guy's name was Dillian White. I found that odd. And then in this interview with Kugan Cassius, Kugan says to Dillian White, says to Anthony Joshua, "Would you say that Dillian White's one up on you right now?" And Anthony Joshua was like, "What do you mean? How? No." And he just gets, immediately, his whole demeanor changes yet again. And he starts getting like irate because Kugan is mentioning the fact that he lost, which he did lose. And, Kugan says, "Well, he beat you once in the amateurs." And Joshua says, "Look, I don't care about that." Well, he obviously does care about it because of the response, right? You don't respond like that if you don't care. But he said, I don't care about that. And if you get dumb, I'll knock your fucking head off. And I don't know who he was directing those words to, whether it was Kugan or just whoever in general, in terms of taking him, like he said something like, "If you think I'm the same fighter now," he said, "I'm a beast now. I'm a beast now. And if you're dumb enough to think I'm the same fighter now as I was back then, I'll knock your fucking head off." So I don't know, but either way, go watch the interview for yourselves and tell me what you think. I was just surprised that his composure was rattled and shaken so easily just by a simple question about him losing. Like, he did lose. You know, when Floyd Mayweather is asked about his amateur losses, does he get rattled the way that Anthony Joshua did? You know, I don't see the top guys get rattled that easily just by talking about, you know, their failures. I don't see it. You know, sometimes with Floyd and a lot of the top fighters, they get so much criticism on such a regular basis. Obviously, it's like the straw that broke the camel's back. So if you catch them on a bad day, they might react badly. But generally speaking, the best guys, they're very calm about what has happened and they're very at ease about what has happened in their careers. Now, in terms of Anthony Joshua, with this button that you can push now, we know what Anthony Joshua's button is at the moment. And if a future opponent can push that button, they're going to get a response. But how is that going to affect Anthony Joshua? Will it affect his performances in a negative way? Or will it actually enhance his performances? Because some fighters, you can push their buttons, you can get them upset, but they manage to channel that aggression and that anger into training harder. And when they turn up on fight night, they don't let the emotions get to them. They just channel the aggression and channel the anger. And a good example of that would be Lennox Lewis in the Hasim Rahman rematch. He was pissed off with Rahman before the fight, but he just kept it all inside. He channeled it very, very well, and he went out there and he did a job on Hasim Rahman. Will Anthony Joshua be able to do that when someone starts pushing his buttons, when a future opponent starts pushing his buttons? Or will he be a guy like Amir Khan, who once you start getting under his skin, then the red mist comes down and he loses all his composure and you can exploit his mistakes? Which one is it going to be? Because like I say, future opponents, if they're smart, at the top level in boxing, psychology is very important. So if they're smart, they're going to look at things like that at those interviews and they're going to say, you know what, I can get under this guy's skin. And I'm going to be very interested to see Anthony Joshua face Dillian White in the rematch, you know, as professionals. Because from what I've seen so far of Dillian White, to me, he's a much more, I don't want to say level-headed, but I haven't seen any psychological weaknesses so far with Dillian White. So far, there might be some, but I haven't seen any. He seems a lot more comfortable with his, you know, strengths and weaknesses, with his successes and his failures, than Anthony Joshua does at the moment. So, I don't know, maybe Dillian White might be able to play on Anthony Joshua's mind psychologically if they do fight as professionals. So, it's definitely a fight I'll be looking forward to. Anthony Joshua, in the same interview on IFL TV, said that's definitely a fight that can happen in the future. I hope it happens sooner rather than later, because I think that's just an amazing fight. Amazing fight for UK heavyweight boxing. So, yeah, you know, I'm always interested in psychology. So, I had to do this video, and I don't just look at fighters from a physical standpoint, from a tactical standpoint. I look at their psychology, their mindset. And Anthony Joshua has got a hell of a lot going for him. And as you know, I've been very big on Anthony Joshua on my 2 boxing channels over the years. I've been talking about him and touting him as a future, you know, a top fighter, top British fighter, potentially. So this is not hating or bashing or anything like that on Anthony Joshua. Anthony Joshua is a tremendous prospect with a tremendous amount of talent and ability and potential. But I look at both sides. I don't just look at the positives. I have to look at the negatives and possible weaknesses as well, if it is a weakness. Because like I say, he might be able to channel that aggression and make it work for him. Let me know what you think, man. Have a look at the interview for yourself and give me your take on it. All right? This is Hatman. I'm out.